Earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his warning to terrorist group Hezbollah to not enter the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The latest warning came after yesterday's sudden escalation of strikes by Hezbollah across Israel's northern border. Also today, the leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah warned the United States that preventing a wider regional conflict depended on stopping Israel's attacks against Hamas in Gaza, which Israel may not be inclined to do. Does that mean it's only a matter of time before Hezbollah declares an all-out war on Israel? Joining me now for an update from on the ground in Israel is freelance war reporter Chuck Holton. Chuck, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Sure thing, Joseph. Good to see you.
Now, I had a couple of the headlines there. What's the latest from your perspective there in Israel?
Well, I'm in the northern tip of Israel in a town called Kiryat Shimona. It's the largest town in the northern part of Israel, and it's completely empty now. It's been evacuated for weeks, and the reason for that is because of those rocket attacks that have been near constant since the 7th of October, and they have been slowly ramping up every day. Yesterday, when I pulled into town about 5 p.m., just after dark, I could watch rockets taking off from Israel and flying into Lebanon and exploding against the mountains in Lebanon. And that was in response to rocket attacks that had come into Kiryat Shimona just minutes before. There were a couple of injuries, light injuries, nothing serious, but they did destroy a shopkeeper's storefront in downtown Kiryat Shimona, as well as several cars that were in the parking lot when that rocket hit. The interesting thing about that rocket attack is that it did not come from Hezbollah. It actually came from Hamas in Lebanon. Many people don't know that Hamas has chapters in Lebanon and in the West Bank, and that helps us to understand that it's not just Hezbollah that's the threat. We have other militias, Shiite militias that are funded by Iran, that come out of Iraq and come out of Syria, that are made up of just large groups of kind of the United Nations of what's left over of ISIS. And so you have people from Pakistan, Chechnya, and Sudan, and all over the world, extremist Muslims that are flocking to this cause and saying that they're coming into Lebanon to attack Israel. Now, the question is, will they actually do it? What we saw today was this speech by Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah, where he made lots of noises praising the martyrs of October 7th and that sort of thing, but stopped short of calling for all-out war, stopped short of actually declaring war on Israel. What he did say is that they will not be deterred by the threats from the United States and Israel, and that all options are still on the table. What that means is anybody's guess. But if you read between the lines a little bit, it kind of sounded like he was leaving Hamas out to dry by saying that the Palestinians were the ones who planned October 7th and executed it, and we didn't know anything about it. That was the only line in that speech that made me think that perhaps he's not planning on declaring war against Israel. And that's probably because Hezbollah is as much a political party as it is a militia group anymore. And they have a lot of political concerns inside Lebanon that they have to worry about if they're going to declare war on Israel.
Now, Chuck, very quickly, you mentioned that the town you're in there has been evacuated because of these rocket launches. Where are people going?
More than 250,000 people have been evacuated from Israel's border areas within 5 kilometers of the border in the north and in the south. And there's a government program that will pay for them to go to hotels. So I have an apartment in Jerusalem. There's a big hotel right across the street from that apartment, and it's completely full now of refugees or internally displaced people. And so they're either doing that or going to stay with family elsewhere inside Israel.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about pauses in the war recently, and the Pentagon has tried to make it clear that that's different than a ceasefire. Is this a distinction without a difference? Is that a political distinction, or is there really something meaningfully different between a pause and a ceasefire?
Now, the Israelis understand that either way would represent a win for Hamas, and Hamas would claim it as such. So, whether it's a pause or a ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, Hamas would be able to come out and say, "We stopped the Israeli army. We win." It would be an information war coup for Hamas, and besides, I don't think politically the government here in Israel could survive if they were to stop or even slow down on this, because the people of Israel are out for blood, and they are not happy one bit about the fact, for example, that Israel is actually providing drinking water to people in the southern part of Gaza. Israel is trying to help people understand that they're going about this in the most humane way they possibly can. But war is war, and it's violent, and it's dirty, and it's wasteful. But the people of Israel want their pound of flesh, and they will not allow the government to stop this until Hamas is done.
From the Israeli perspective, what is the objective at the moment, and how close are they to accomplishing that goal?
Well, they have surrounded the northern part of Gaza now. Gaza City is completely encircled, and so they're going to be cleaning that out. But that doesn't mean they're close to an end. Unless Hamas were to suddenly grow a conscience and lay down its arms, this is going to be a months-long process at least, because now what they're fighting is a tunnel insurgency, which is probably the most horrific and difficult military operation you could ever dream of. How long it's going to last? Well, their objectives are to get rid of Hamas, to depose Hamas, and they're going to essentially have to pulverize the northern part of Gaza in order to even get anywhere close to doing that. And so their other goal is to get the release of the hostages. If you think about it, this pause that Anthony Blinken and President Biden are talking about would make it significantly less likely that they'd be able to get any decent number of those hostages out. Hamas might trickle out one or two, but Hamas has a vested interest in drawing this thing out as long as possible. Israel understands that, and so they know they have to rip the Band-Aid off and get this over with as soon as possible, get as many hostages back as they can, and their only way they're going to do that is to keep the pressure on Hamas in Gaza. The last objective they have is to create a space that is safe, so to create a buffer between Israel and what's left of the people in Gaza by basically just destroying everything in the northern part of the Gaza Strip.
Now, given that reality, there's been a lot of criticism from the left in the United States about about Israel's operations. When U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Tel Aviv today, Israeli President Herzog made it a point to illustrate how Israel has been working hard to minimize civilian casualties. Let's play clip one.
So this is a leaflet which we are sending by over 1,200,000 leaflets to the citizens of Gaza. We've carried out 6 million text messages and 4 million phone calls to the citizens of Gaza according to the rules of international law, where we alerted the citizens in advance.
Chuck, what's your take on how Israel is carrying out these operations?
Well, I've heard a lot of people in the States criticizing the way that Israel is going about this, but I haven't heard those same people give any actual suggestions of what Israel should do. And it makes one think that they just believe Israel ought to just lay down and die. And Israel is not disposed to do that in any way, shape, or form. So as I said, the people here, and I'm talking about the soldiers who are going to go do the fighting, they are not ready to even slow down in the least. They keep saying ceasefire. We haven't even started fighting yet. This is just a prelude to what we're going to bring to Gaza. And they understand that the information battle space is the primary battle space that has to be won, and that right now they are losing in that primary battle space simply because the media is sort of all in the tank for Palestinians and Gaza and Hamas. And so they are doing things like you saw just there to try to make it clear that, look, we are doing this in the most humane way possible. But I think a lot of people back home just don't understand the nature of war. The war is tremendously violent, it's tremendously wasteful, it's tremendously damaging, but it has to be that way in order to get the results that that we're looking for out of this, which is no more terror attacks like we saw on October 7th.
Chuck, about a minute left. Talked about Hezbollah and the potential of their engagement previously. Can you compare Hezbollah's military capacity to Hamas's? And so what that would mean for Israel if they were to face a similar challenge from the north?
So these organizations, whether it's ISIS or Hamas or Al-Qaeda or what have you, they are the masters of exaggeration. They always talk a good game. They're like the Chihuahua that thinks he's a Doberman pincer. And so you have to take what the numbers that they put out, whether it's casualty numbers or troop strength numbers or anything, with a grain of salt. They're going to lie about it. There's no two ways about that. They're going to try to doctor the information to work in their favor because they understand that the information battle space is the most important one. That said, Hezbollah is more powerful than Hamas in terms of numbers and in terms of materiel. They have a lot more rockets. So far tonight, after the speech from Nasrallah, it's been incredibly quiet up here in the north, and that's a very good sign.
Chuck, I have to cut you off there.
We
are out of time. From Israel, thank you for joining us very much.